We're live.
Hey, everybody, it's so good to see you. Welcome to your Sunday. We are so excited to be here with you. We've got Rhonda Elliott, Bex Marie, and we've got a special guest today who is an author of books, and he even reads his own books so that we can listen to them while we're doing the housework. I mean, this is so amazing, and it's Mike Clelland. We have some beautiful information that he is going to be bringing us today about a connection between owls and UFOs. Have you ever experienced this? Well, today we are going to hear some amazing stories about this, and I invite you to share your experiences below too, because heck, I like to read them all, so show us what you got. Welcome, Mike. Thank you for being on our show.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
Mike, you're just, you bring a lovely level of high strangeness to our show. I mean, people would say our show is strange to begin with, but you've taken it up to a new level. And not the bad level, you know, everybody's getting kind of tired of us energy workers or us diviners, but, mediums, it's all old hat. But you have a new level of strangeness. And when I go, wow, that is something really unique. It takes a lot nowadays. But what I'd like everybody to do is to share this out, and people who share it the most this week win a session with me, I guess. Yes. So, and Bex will announce the winners at the end of the show. So, Mike Clelland, I heard about you first on Euphonet, and it was a wonderful program. I love trying to poach Jim Perry's guests, because he seems to find the best ones, and your books are really interesting, and I can hardly wait to dive into them, because you talk about the connection between UFOs and owls. And owls have been in our culture for a long time. A lot of native cultures and probably early settlers cultures up here think of the owl as a harbinger. If you hear an owl, you kind of a superstition that someone's going to die, that they're also the wise old owl, all the things we think about owls. But you have a new connection, and you write books. This is just sort of a little niche of your books. You're also a long time backpacker, and you were in the Rockies for a while, and now you're in the Adirondacks. And I love backpacking, so I got to get your books on ultralight backpacking. So that would be really cool. And I'm going to take a minute. You guys share it out, and you share it out. Mike, tell us about how you started into this owl connection, because that's a fascinating story, and I'd love you to share it. How you made this connection.
Yeah, to tell that story correctly is actually, it's kind of a long story how I got started in this. I guess in 2006, I'll try to make this a little shorter. I can go on and drone and tell this. I've told the story many times. It's told in most recently in my very, very thoroughly in my most recent book, which is called Hidden Experience. Now, in 2006, I was 44 years old. That was a point in my life when I knew I had to look into my experiences. I had experiences that certainly seemed to imply UFO contact, whether that was out-and-out abduction. There were certainly clues that pointed to that, and I was not going there. Like, I was not going to look into my own experiences. I did have, I was reading UFO books quite obsessively at that point. So for me, 2006 was that point. Like when the tea kettle is just about to boil, right? You may not be able to, there's almost, you can sense a sort of tension in the kitchen right before the tea kettle starts to boil. And I think that's where I was in my life. And I wasn't going to go there. So I went, I was living out west near Rocky Mountain in the Rocky Mountains near Grand Teton National Park. And I went camping for one night with a friend, and it was someone I actually didn't really know that well. And then we went out just for one night. It was a beautiful, clear night. We could tell by the weather. We didn't take any shelter. We were just going to sleep out under the stars. It was the autumn. Her name is Kristen. And at sunset, we were talking. We were having this conversation, and I was And I was in the midst of this conversation. I was like, wow, this person is much deeper and I'm really impressed. I didn't expect this level of spirituality, I guess. And then at that moment, an owl flew over. And then another owl, and then a third owl. And then we watched these owls while the sun was setting. And as we laid our sleeping bags down on the ground under the night sky, it was dark at this point, we'd lay on our backs, and these owls would swoop over our faces. They would get really close, and they would blot out the stars for just 1 second. Now, owls are very quiet in flight, and it was totally silent. It was absolutely magical. And then afterwards, we were both like, wow, that was really cool. So super cool about the owls. And then I said, hey, listen, if I go camping again, I love going out just for one night. I'll give you a call. And she said, sure. And so 4 days later, I called her again, and we went out one more time. And this time, it was a little colder. So I said, let's hike up to that hilltop before the sun comes down, because we'll generate a little heat, and then we can come back down. We did have a shelter this time. We get in the tent, and it'll be a little warmer, just because it felt like kind of chilly. So we walked up this hill, and we get to the top of this hill, and as we got to it wasn't a mountain or anything, like it was just a nearby hilltop. And as we got to this hilltop, 3 owls flew around us. And before, 4 days earlier, they would fly kind of close, and you'd see them in a branch over there, or they'd swoop down kind of above you. This was multiplied. They were landing on the branches right next to us, and they were landing on the ground right in front of us, and they were swooping over us close enough to touch. And to have it happen once was kind of cool. To have it happen twice with the same person. This was a different part of the mountains, and I am convinced. There's no way I can prove this, obviously. I'm convinced they're the same 3 owls. Now, to have it happen once was cool, but to have it happen twice was just absolutely mystical. And I did not talk about this at the time, and I've been talking about it now. Since when I was standing there looking at these real owls landing on the ground in front of me and Kristen, it's on the ground, it's standing there like 8 feet away from us. I had the voice in my head that very clearly said, this has something to do with the UFOs. And I heard it as clear as can be, and it was shocking. And I later started a blog, and because of this owl thing, this owl is really powerful. Like it kind of made me super obsessed about owls. I was looking up owl totems. I was asking people about owls. I talked to owl biologists in the area and said, does this ever happen? I explained what happened. They looked at me like, no, that doesn't happen. I remember we had one conversation, and the guy kind of backed away like he was an ornithologist, and he kind of backed away like I was the crazy uncle at the family reunion or something like that. He didn't want to. So, and then afterwards, I started a blog, and I wrote the story I just told. I wrote it up as a little diary entry, and I put that on the very first few days of the blog. And I thought to myself, wait, what was Kristen talking about that very first night when we saw the very first owl? I remember we were having this conversation. So this was in 2009, so it was 3 years later that I started the blog and posted it online. So I got a hold of Kristen, and I said, what were we talking about the very first night when we saw the very first owl? And she said, I remember exactly what we were talking about. I was giving my deepest, most heartfelt definition of what God means to me. And that one detail, it really shocked me. I mean, all of a sudden, so like this owl thing, it's kind of got a mystical connection to the UFO thing, and that's in the literature. I didn't stumble on that. I didn't find that out. A lot of people who've done research have noticed that. But when she said the connection to God, now I'm not at all churchy, but I recognize the power in that statement, and it really. I mean, before I was kind of wigged out about the owl and UFO thing. After she said that, I was like pushed off the cliff. And what it forced me to do was look into my own experiences. So I started looking into my own contact experiences. And now, a decade after the blog was started, and I guess like 14 years after seeing the owls with Kristen, 13 years, I am absolutely convinced that I've had other experiences too. And I'll tell you, looking into this owl UFO connection has, I guess the universe like reflect the energy I'm putting out is being reflected back, and I am getting so many owl synchronicities. Now, I am at the point now where I've been writing about this stuff. I've been talking publicly about these experiences. I've been talking publicly about the owl and UFO connections. If anyone in the world has an experience where they see an owl and a UFO, like I'm 2 mouse clicks away. Like you search me on the internet, you type in owls, UFOs, and I am the first thing that comes up, and I'm the next 15 things that come up under that. So yeah, so I have been collecting a lot of owl and UFO stories. People are reaching out to me, and I take that role extremely seriously. There, that was a long answer to a very simple question.
So you have had experiences in the past with UFOs. And that's in your new book, right? That's the latest book, Hidden Experience, I believe. The one that it's just out or it's coming out. I was sort of confused.
No, can you see it? How am I doing here? There we go. There it is. I'm holding it in front of the camera here. Oh,
love it. Woo.
Okay, so that book, that's the most recent book, and that one,
nice.
Yes, I talk about these experiences. So before the event in 2006, as a little boy, I had a close-up UFO sighting. I had a missing time event. When I was 30, I had an event where I was at my house. I was living in Maine at the time, and I woke up in the middle of the night. I woke up in the middle of the night, and I sat up in bed, and I looked out the window, and there were 5 skinny gray aliens walking towards the house. And it's a spooky image, and I was like absolutely blank. And I heard this voice in my head that said, "Now is the time to put your head on the pillow and shut down." And that's exactly what I did. I just calmly put my head on the pillow. The whole experience lasted maybe 25, 30 seconds. And the next morning I dismissed it completely as a dream. I never even bothered to go out and see if there were footprints in the snow. But that event, there's so many synchronistic threads that tie to that event, and to all these events. And that's in the title of the books. Synchronicity shows up in the title of each of my books. And there's something about the synchronicities that plays into the power of these events, and it's hard to look at the overall UFO experience without integrating the synchronistic stuff.
Of the owls.
Breadcrumbs, right? That's what's
Yeah.
happening.
The clues, the breadcrumbs, the threads you pull on, exactly. Yeah, the signposts along the path, however, whatever term you want to use. Yeah, something is forcing you to pay attention at a deeper level.
And I've heard of other experiencers who they see it. Other people are almost like they're having a dampening field put over them, that they will not acknowledge it, will not see it, will have all
Very
sorts
common.
of things even. And it's almost like whether the people who can see it are immune to it or are supposed to see it. Those are the questions, are they the ones that are actually supposed to see it, or are they just immune to it and sort of open to it? Is it like a gift, like when you can sense spirits around you, or when you can, hear music, or whatever it is? Like, is it just one of those gifts, or versus, depending on how you think of it?
Yeah,
What
well,
do
that's
you
very
think?
common for someone to be, you have 3 people in a car and 2 of them see a UFO and they're like pointing to it, and the third person says, "I don't see it." It's like, there's this big giant metal craft like hovering above the road right in front of the car. What do you mean you can't see it? Like, I don't see anything. I don't know what you're talking about. That is surprisingly common. I have one story. This came from a book. The author is named Karina Sables. She's Canadian, and I think she's in Vancouver or near Vancouver. She went out for a skywatch with her, I think it was her boyfriend at the time, and she had 2 kids. So I think there were 4 people in the car, if I'm remembering the story correctly. So they go to a skywatch, and then all of them, all at the same time, say, "Oh, I don't feel very good." And they go to the car and they fall asleep. And then they all wake up at the same time, and there's kind of nobody left at the skywatch, and they say, "Okay, let's drive home." So they're driving on the road on the way home, and they turn this corner, and the man is driving, and it's Karina and her 2 daughters. I think I have this correctly. And all 3 of them, the 3 women in the car, all scream, "Ah!" And the guy says, "What are you screaming for? That's just an owl standing on the side of the road." And they all go, "That was a gray alien." So here we have an example of one person seeing an owl while 3 other people see what would be the prototypical gray alien that we've all recognized in pop culture now. And
yeah.
that story in one form or another repeats over and over and over and over in my files and in my books.
And even like you, you say now's the time to go back to sleep. It's like they put that suggestion in your head. Back to sleep I go. Like who wouldn't
And it was
freak
like I
out?
laid my head on the pillow and it was like I was out. Yeah.
Yeah, like normal people see 5 gray aliens come to their house. They're locking the door and they're finding any weapon they have.
Yeah.
The fire extinguisher, whatever else they have in their house, and they're going, are calling 911 and saying there's gray aliens in my yard. No, it's time to go to sleep now. I think I'll just go to sleep. Well, I guess we just lost Teresa. But that's kind of fascinating. The other always my question is that they put the owls in the screens, but why do they put lights on their crafts if they don't want us to see them? I'm sorry.
Well, they want it. So that's an excellent question. Yeah, the answer would be they do want us to see them. So
yeah,
there was a fellow Harold Shermer, the Shermer case. It was a police officer named Shermer driving down the road. I think this was like in the mid '60s. And he was someplace like Indiana. He's a police officer. So he driving down the road, there's a landed flying saucer. These guys say, come on in. And so he goes in and they give him a tour. Nobody really gets the same kind of tours like that anymore. So he walks into this flying saucer, gets a tour. And then at the end, he's like, what do I tell people? And they basically, or he told, the aliens told him, we want people to believe in us, but not too much. Which was an interesting thing to say, right? So they're kind of, if they wanted to really make their presence known, they certainly could, but they're certainly at the periphery of our overall society and our thoughts, I guess.
They're trying to get us to believe sort of slowly, sort of like the Star Trek influence, right? It's like at first, if you said the Star Trek like 40 years ago and said some of the terms that, beam me up, Scotty, or whatever else, or you look at their telecommunicators and it's like, oh yeah, we have all that stuff now. And we don't think it's weird. Like all their communicators, all their little vision, special things, we don't think it's weird. It's like we're being conditioned.
Yeah, it's like there's as far as and the role of the UFO occupants, let's say, there certainly seems to be a sort of slow drip feed, just one drop at a time, just ever so slowly societally is. So I don't know what the statistics are right now, but it's well over half the people in America believe in UFOs. Now, what a UFO might be is a very complicated thing. So, but they say, oh yeah, I have a belief in UFOs. Which is that I don't think that would have happened 50 years ago. And I'm sure there was people doing surveys and stuff at that point, but I think it's changing. And I think the younger culture certainly is much more open to it than the aging culture in our society, in America and specifically.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of just, I don't know, slow osmosis or something. I don't know. It's like, I've been seeing them all my life, so I've never had a problem with it. But at first, it's like anything else. You wouldn't say to anybody, like, yeah, I've seen them. And my husband, who, I don't know if you've seen the X-Files with the back of Fox Mulder, and he's got that poster behind him, because I want to believe. My husband's poster is, I don't want to believe and I don't want to know. So he sees them too, and he's seen them with me, and he always has another explanation. No, it's not that. It's not that. It's not that. Because we'll go through them. Because I've been on flight paths all my life. I know what's a jet, what's a Cessna. I know all those things. I know what's a helicopter. But, we'll see light ships and we'll see other ships. But,
Now,
says,
we're at a point in history now where I feel strongly there are advanced drones. Maybe not even advanced. I mean, the $49 one you buy at Toys R Us looks pretty darn eerie when you fly it around at night. They have a strange smoothness to it. So we're at a point now where my sense is that within the data pool of sightings, perhaps a goodly percentage could be chalked up to drones, even toy drones, whether they're military. Yeah. But then there's other things that Oh, go on. I'm sorry, we're overlapping a little
Yeah,
bit with
no,
the sound.
no, no. I totally agree with that. You have to now factor them in and what they look like because they're creepy looking
Yeah.
themselves, and where you're seeing them too. So,
Yeah.
But the owls, you thought of something else about owls. You were talking about them as maybe not just UFO, but maybe they're a different symbol. Maybe they come in to have more of a symbology to them when they appear with the UFOs, like a transformation symbol as well.
You know,
Like
I actually, Richard Dolan published the book, and he would say, people would ask the question, like, what do owls mean? And I would always have to, like, I would always do this thing, like, I don't know what they mean. And he kind of took me aside, like, you can't do that anymore. You can't give that answer anymore. It's not fair. Like, you got to have an answer. So I have since come up with 4 reasons and what owls may mean. And I got to do this. I got to put my glasses on. And this is right from my research here. So the first is owls are alarm clocks, right? So that is the simplest answer. The owl is an alarm clock. It is here to wake us up, right? So I kind of, in the book, I deliver this little line that I kind of proud of in a way, but it was like, if someone's asleep, you got to shake them to wake them. And if someone's deeply asleep, you really got to shake them. And if someone's like in denial, then my sense is the owls show up. And they're here to wake us up. Wake us up to what? That's a little slippery, Now, the second thing is an owl is an archetype. Now, they are a symbol, and an archetype would be an image that is stored deep within within humanity's genetic memory bank. It's as if there's a hidden meaning that's locked away and shared within our grand consciousness, within all of our consciousness. And we may not be able to know that on a conscious level, but I feel strongly we certainly understand the symbol subconsciously. All of us do. And we think in symbols, and owls are touching us on that level, right? So you go to Star Wars, you go see the movie Star Wars, you see Luke Skywalker, you're seeing an action movie with, spaceships and laser beams and stuff, but you are seeing an archetypal image of a hero's journey presented to you. And this goes way back to the dawn of man. So I'm convinced that owls were showing up just as powerfully, perhaps more powerfully to men in caves, humanity in caves, as they are now. And then the third one is owls are here to announce initiation. Now this shows up a lot, where people will have a lot of owl sightings very early on in their, I don't want to get too airy-fairy, but in their journey to openness, in their journey to this new enlightenment, I guess, that this stuff is real. And then in a sense, I also say owls are a totem of the transformational experience. Owls are a totem of the transformational experience, right? Seeing a UFO can transform someone, right? You see a UFO, boom, your whole reality shatters, and it has to be rebuilt. People can have an owl sighting. I've talked to many people who have owl sightings that have changed their lives. So there's the 4 reasons, and it's a slippery slope because I do not have a perfect answer. I've got many answers where the puzzle pieces fit really nicely, but that doesn't quite make it true. But so my sense is, in my own research, the owls are here to play a powerful role in an individual's enlightenment.
So cool.
So, have any of our guests that are watching, your viewers, commented on, they have any owl stories? Anybody has an owl story for Mike? That would be interesting.
No owl stories yet, but Kenzel Mitchell said, hello, shared good healing from Missouri. And Nancy Louise says, good morning. I'm hoping that Mike is a Twin Peaks fan. I feel like there might be an owl UFO connection with that. I'm not sure exactly what, though.
Oh, I know just what he's talking. So the Twin Peaks uses, so Twin Peaks within the especially, I did not see the reboot of Twin Peaks that came out just within the last couple of years, but the initial series, the owl shows up all over the place. And there's also like this UFO thread that runs through it. There's like a kind of a Project Blue Book officer that shows up in the town. And so my sense is, so the David Lynch, the director and creator of that, gets his ideas through deep meditation. He does not talk about the source. Like he doesn't give interviews and explain his movies. His movies are very cryptic and weird and open-ended and such. So what I can say is that Whitley Strieber's book Communion came out in
I read that.
1987, and I think Twin Peaks came out in 1990, which is 3 years later. And I am certain the scriptwriters of that show read the book Communion. And within Communion, early on in the book, right before Whitley describes his Christmas Day, or it would have been the nighttime, I guess, Christmas night event, he saw an owl out his window. And so then he saw an owl out his window. And then he had this very powerful experience that we would now come to call UFO contact. And when he explained the next day that he had this weird experience and he saw an owl out the window, him and his wife went to the window, and it was wintertime in New York State, and they looked out on the where the owl should have been standing, and there was snow, but it wasn't fresh snow. It was snow that had been there, and there was no tracks in the snow. And he said when he saw there were no tracks, it was like it scared him. So I'm going to go out on a limb here. He was presented with a symbol. He was presented with an archetypal symbol at the moment of what we now call UFO contact. So I have the sense that if you're going through a shamanic initiation and you're out in your teepee in the plains of North Dakota, and you open your teepee door while going through a shamanic journey, you might see an owl. So I'm blending these things together, and I don't think that argument I think that's valid. So Twin Peaks uses the owl. There's a little line, the owls are not what they seem, which is perfect, right? That's perfect. So my sense is the scriptwriters read Whitley Strieber's book, which is very open-ended, which is very mysterious, which provides more questions than answers, and they plugged it into the series, which is very open-ended, which is very mysterious, which provides more questions than answers. So it was a perfect fit. So my sense is that they took something in pop culture and just placed it into their fictional TV show.
Well, and also enables soft disclosure, which we're getting a lot more of, right? So they put these little things in shows and movies and books and all of that.
Yes.
It's their way of divulging information without us realizing that it's actually real. So I think
Now this is Well, now who is the they, right? I mean, is it happening subconsciously? I mean, is it who's doing it? I think there's a yeah, I think so too. I don't think there might be. I'm certain there are some occasions when they're someone in the basement of the Pentagon very carefully said, call up Hollywood, we got to plant the seed. But I don't think that happens. I think it happens organically where the creative process just these archetypes are floating around there within the noosphere, and our subconscious grabs them. The creative process is especially highly charged things like Twin Peaks.
Yeah, it is. It's like a little
Do you
trigger.
think maybe they channel this to us? Now, this is a question. Do you think maybe the UFOs, the occupants of the UFOs or of that dimension or wherever they come from, or the owls, channel this information to us, and it comes form, and it's oh, that's a really interesting idea. I never thought of it before like that. Just like they dampen us down or dumb us down sometimes to not see them. Sometimes we're
they plant a creative seed. Yeah. They would plant a creative seed. Yes. Now the answer. So I don't know. I mean, I have no proof, but I would certainly say that fits so clearly. Now I'm going to do this little thing here. So here's 3 books. So this is about the last 7 years of my life, 8 years of my life. I don't know how I can see these here. There's 3 books all stacked together. I totaled up the page count. If you total up all the pages for 3 books, it's 107 pages. Excuse me, 1,007 pages. So those are basically 1,000 pages I have written on UFOs and owls, blending in my own story within those events. Now, I have said this. So I feel that those books were influenced by an outside source. I mean, I wrote them. I sat there and pushed everything. I did not channel them, but I can tell you there were so many points when I would be like, this chapter just isn't fitting. It just doesn't fit. I got to finish this chapter. And it's just like, and then ping, I'll get an email. It'll be the perfect story to cleanly, connect all the threads in the chapter. That happened in a way that defies all logic. So I'm saying that that book was, there was a shepherding process, and I was influenced by an outside source, and that's the source of those books.
Yeah, I can totally get it, because that's how I get my questions sometimes.
Well, it's not always an outside source, though. It's an inside source. It's coming through you, but it's just,
Yeah. I mean, but my radio plays music. The music's coming out of the radio, but it's being broadcast from someplace. Like, I don't have to, you know what I mean? I can look at my car radio and I can hear the music coming out of it, and I don't need to drive to the radio station to prove that it's coming from an outside source. Yeah.
But you do need to tune it to that station,
Exactly.
and I
you
think
definitely have to
that's the
dial it in.
difference.
Yeah. So sometimes
You
if it's
have to
coming in
definitely-
fuzzy,
yeah.
you don't want
to
fuzzy
dial it
information.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it depends on what kind of filter. Like I was saying to the other person one day, like, she's a librarian. And I said, I bet you see libraries everywhere where most people don't. It's what filter you put on your eyes or on your brain to see. Now, I mean, I'm aware of owls all the time. I'm a birder, so I'm aware of owls. I can tell you the difference between owl calls, but some people wouldn't be able to do that. But so owls, UFOs, now which came first, the chicken or the egg? I have no idea which came first, the awareness or the awareness. So
yeah, I think so my sense is that the owl is an ancient symbol, and it is playing the same role now that it has played throughout human history. So whether presently people are being woken up to UFO experiences. Now, owls show up in other things too. So they show up with, specifically in my research, it's the majority of it is UFO contact events, but they also show up in meditation, dreams, shamanic initiation. I get a lot of that. People there's people doing shamanic work right now, and the people who are going through the initiatory process see owls. And then the fifth would be death. And I have so many stories. Now, that you said you started the show where you hear an owl and someone's going to die. That's right in Shakespeare. In Julius Caesar, they're in Rome, and at night before they all stab Caesar in the forum, in the Senate, they hear the cry of the night bird, and they all know what it means. Tomorrow's the day. So now, a highly charged human event is punctuated by an owl in fiction. I mean, a very highly beautiful, essential piece of fiction that's lasted 400 plus years. Now, what I'm finding is that the owl and death connection is not dark. What I'm finding is I have many, many stories of people seeing an owl after most often a parent has died, and they literally I have one woman, this is in the third book, her name is Suzanne, and she said she contacted Andrea and I one morning, wintertime, Facebook thing. She's like, Andrea, Mike knows about owls. Can I send him a picture? I want to know if this owl is sick. She sends a picture, and it's this big fluffy barred owl on the back porch, and I'm like, don't look sick to me, it looks fine, what's up? She said, well, I was meditating. I miss my mom. I'm still grieving over my mom's death. I need to come to some sort of closure. So I was meditating for some sort of closure on my mom's death, my mom's passing. So I sat and meditated. When I opened my eyes, there was an owl directly in line of sight on the back porch. And she explained if she had been a little bit to the right or a little bit to the left, she wouldn't have seen it. Just she was exactly lined up to see this owl. And I was like, you open that window and you talk to that owl as if it's your mom. And I say that because I've had so many people do exactly that. An owl show up. Now, the day it happened was her mother's birthday. She said the owl spent the entire day either on the back porch or in the trees around the house. And afterwards, she felt a powerful sense. She said she cried and cried and cried talking to the owl. And afterwards, she felt a powerful sense of, I guess, relief, or she was at peace. So that, with the story I just told, I am convinced has happened all throughout human history. People have had an owl show up after the passing of a parent, or any loved one, or a friend. I have another story. She did not give me permission to share this. It was a reporter, and a civic leader had died. She contacted me and said I couldn't put this in the article in the newspaper, but a civic leader had died, and there was a white barn owl that showed up at the memorial, which was in the city park at night. So this white owl is on top of a lamppost in the middle of the park with hundreds of people there. The people lined up and talked to the owl one after another and said, "Thank you, we miss you. You did great work. The town loves you. We all miss you." So they all talked to this owl. No one planned this. It happened completely organically. This story repeats over and over and over again. It is totally a natural human response to seeing an owl, I am convinced, after the death of a loved one.
Wow.
Yeah, there's some kind of ancestral organic connection to owls that we have. You know, we pay attention when we see an owl, or they call us to attention. I think that's the big thing. Jake was wondering, can you expand on the shamanic initiation thing? What have you seen in your research about the shamanic initiation in owls? Do they show up to sort of bring wisdom from above, or what's going on there?
Well, there's one story in the first book where a woman was doing shamanic work, and she was taking mushrooms, ceremonial rituals. So she's sitting down, she makes an intention, and I guess she was probably around 50 at this time, maybe a little late 40s, and she was a mother, and she was taking this very seriously, and she wanted to change her life and to become a healer. So there's this thing where if you do a mushroom journey with the sacred plant medicine, you're often with your mentor. She said, "This is the very first time I did it totally alone." So she sat in her bedroom, and I don't have the direct quote in front of me either, but she sat in her bedroom, and as the mushrooms took effect, this psychedelic thing, and all of a sudden the walls of the room were all covered in these white feathers, and there's this 15-foot tall owl appears in her bedroom, and it's covered in these white feathers, and it's this beautiful female owl. And the owl says to her, "You are no longer mother who yearns. You are now mother who knows." And then she felt she was going from, the 3 stages of the feminine journey, from the maiden to the mother to the crone. She felt she was being initiated into the crone. So here's a person on a shamanic, like basically saying, I need to go to the next level of my shamanic awareness. She's presented with a giant owl. I had people on the Amazon reviews trash my book, like, this guy's like crazy. He's got this story, this nutty woman takes a bunch of drugs, and he's like, you think that's important? Yes, it is important. So the owl, I don't care if I have stories with owl T-shirts showing up, and they are just as powerful as an owl landing, on the branch in front of you. So I thought that was a powerful, beautiful story, and that's normal.
Here's my little story. We talked, and the next day, what shows up on my Facebook feed from the Lanark Woodlot Association owners is all about owls. So,
cool.
Like, it was all in the face of owls. So I posted it on Spirit Session. It was just like, okay, that's a coincidence, right? Not really. And I just thought, wow, now that's pretty cool. Like the next day,
I had one too.
Yep.
Just like
After
you,
we
Rhonda.
Yeah.
I
was looking at my memories, and I had today, 6 years ago today, I posted an owl in flight, so I reposted it today. But to this day, like foreshadowing this event today.
And 11/3, it's November 3rd, 11/3. You multiply those together, you get 33. That's the number
Ooh.
So.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's I'm cautious with those kind of things, but still.
Funny enough, when we did a show a few weeks ago with our Sacred Soul Sisters, an owl came up during that show, and Teresa was reading the card that I shared with you during our meeting. And since then, I've seen owls in videos on Facebook, owl pendants. Then you were talking about the owls. They've been showing up everywhere in TV shows and movies. And I mean, like it's everywhere. There's just owls everywhere. A picture of my son making a hat of an owl a few years ago when he was little. Like, yeah.
Yeah, it's just so funny. I went on a hike with a woman. This is years ago, and I was just as I was starting this owl stuff, and it was in the desert of Utah, and it was and she's like, "We're gonna get to see an owl." I'm like, "Oh, you be careful, maybe, you know." Like, and she had a lot of UFO experiences, and so have I. And we're hiking along, and it was like this one point, which is very untypical of the desert terrain. We were like almost on this little ledge. It was a nice trail and all, but it was kind of bushes and stuff. You had to kind of push your way through. And the narrowest part of the narrowest trail, where you had to kind of scooch around someone, this guy comes around the corner, and he had this funny helmet on, and he was wearing a cape, and he had these big giant goggles on, and the helmet had like little ear tufts on it, and we sat and talked to him for a while, and he was like, "Why are you dressed like that?" And he's like, "Oh, I just thought it'd be fun to go for a hike like this." And he stood by, and he hikes on, and she started laughing so hard. I'm like, "What are you laughing at?" He said, "That was the owl. That was our owl. Like, he had these big, giant, weird, funny, cartoony kind of goggles in a helmet." So he was basically like dressed up as a superhero owl. So yeah, they show cool. They can show up in all kinds of forms. Yeah.
Yeah. We have a viewer who said that. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Nicole Corinne said she saw a barn owl flying in broad daylight around 6 weeks ago. So that's pretty cool.
Wow.
So, but the barn owls are bigger. Yeah. So it's normal to see an owl. It's uncommon to see a owl during the day. You tend to see the big owls during the day because they can hunt during the day. The little owls, there's a lot of little owls that are like 6 inches tall, and those tend to eat like bugs and things like that. So you won't see those during the day much. You'll see those at night a lot.
Because they get hunted.
So my question for her would be like, what was going on in your life when you saw that owl? Right. This is the same question I see if someone sees a UFO. I say, what was going, or a powerful synchronicity, what was going on in your life leading up to that event? What changed in your life after? You know, so yes, there are lots of owls flying around. There's lots of owl T-shirts, and you walk down the main street of any town, you're going to see you're going to peer into windows, and there's going to be an owl on a calendar, and there's going to be a little owl statuette on something. So owl lunch boxes, they're everywhere. So you can make yourself crazy, and I have made myself crazy. So I'm speaking from some authority on this. So
it's like to see the
But I guess the homework for all of us is that, you know, if we notice the owl, try to recall what we're thinking about and what's going on in our life at that time, regardless of where we're seeing it or anything else. Just try to be mindful of what's going on with us at that time.
Oh, and Andrea, my partner here at the house here, we've had experiences where we're talking and we're just like all of a sudden with our owl hooting right out the window, and we're like, "What were we talking about right that second?" It was like right at that second, right at that moment, we were talking about UFOs. Yeah. We talk about UFOs all the time anyway, that's good. But still, it's punctuating.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah, it's like the puncher.
Yeah.
Just listen. Yeah. So, Mike, we're going to have you again because you've got
Happily,
so much going on, and we want to hear what your next project is going to be. Just love to hook up with you sometime when we're down there. One day I hope to be at Clear Lake, and you know Kathy Holmeyer, a friend of ours, who's just down the road from you, which is also kind of synchronistic too. So. Maybe we'll go sky watching down there or sky watching up here. You know, I have a base in my backyard.
Oh, Clear Lake is a beautiful spot to watch the stars. Yeah.
Yeah. So out in the country,
we really wonderful. This has been a delight.
Yes. You can get a hold of Mike. All his information is in our introduction here. He's got his lovely website there. You can get his books on Amazon, and he's got ultralight backpacking books too. I wish I'd read them like 10 years ago. But he's got all sorts of books besides his Owl Awakenings and Messenger books. They're just wonderful, interesting books. I can hardly wait for them. They're on my Christmas list. Anyways,
wonderful.
We really have enjoyed having you, and you're going to do the closing announcements. Teresa's popped up. They had that terrible windstorm in Tennessee, and we're lucky we even have Teresa today because she's been popping in and out. We got it for
Yes,
the first
I've got
part.
the announcements. And thank you, Mike, so much because it's been very informative for me as well. I don't always put things together, and to have that connection now and know going forward that just to be more mindful, just to be more aware and to recognize the signs more. I really appreciate that. So thank you so much for showing up and doing what you do. And
Sure. Just
it's
one little
powerful.
final.
Yeah.
Yeah, one little. So in my research, right? So straight ahead, you introduced the show saying like, oh, the owls have this mythology, this folklore of gloom and doom. They have that folklore. What I am finding in my own research is very few events point to that in what I've collected. I'm seeing the owl much more as a powerful totem of the transformational process. Now, going through it's a benevolent sign, in my opinion. It might mean hard work, and hard work is okay, but it's presenting the viewer with a challenge. So.
Yeah, and I always think that death is not a bad thing. So I have another story. It's like a graduation. So, being transformed, I guess going back to spirit is another transformation, and it's
Absolutely,
not a bad thing. So I guess it's how you frame death too, if it's a good or a bad thing. It can be tragic, but sometimes it's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's awesome. All right, so real quick for the announcements, remember, please share this out. If you share this out, whoever shares out the most will win a reading with Rhonda. So get it shared out. We'll let you know who wins that next week. The winner of the shared out last week, who won a reading with Teresa, is Krista Higginbotham. So Teresa will get a hold of you and set that up. Yeah. And we had an extra winner last week. Deepal Shah was graciously offering a reading as well, or a session, sorry. And the winner of that was Marla Torres. So congratulations.
Oh, yay.
And we will let people know, and she will get a hold of you and get it set up. And we are so honored to have you all here with us every Sunday. We appreciate your love and support, and we love showing up and sharing this information with you. So we look forward to seeing you next week. We love you all very much. What? Oh, go ahead.
Did you ask the rock and roll question, or did I miss it?
No, we didn't even think to tell him about the rock and roll question.
So he's going to have to come with us.
That's a lot of pressure at the last second.
Mike, we have pressure for you on the last second. What's your favorite? Ask him.
Okay,
Theme
if you
song.
had to choose a song to be the theme song of your life, what would that be? And
I think about this all the time.
Oh, good.
I think about this
you.
all the time. I don't have a good answer right off the top of my head, though.
Well, the first thing that gets you, what is it?
Down by the River by Sam Cooke.
There you go. Good choice.
It's not rock and roll. That's more soul. But
That's okay.
That's cool. Yeah, the soul rocks. Yeah.
Yeah, that's perfect. There you go. Well, thank you very much. That's
Sure.
our fun little, give an intimate view into our guest question.
Yeah.
So we're sorry we didn't prep you for it ahead of time.
No, that's fine. Oh no, yeah, I would have. Don't worry at all. I'm like, it's much better to unprep people when you throw a question at them like that. So.
That's good stuff. All right. Well, thank you all again, and we love you all, and have a blessed week.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Namaste.
Okay, thanks.
Bye-bye.
Ding.